Well, it brings me no joy in saying this, but it needs to be said. The fun internet is gone. The Wild West of the internet is over. The time of the orc has come.
The age of men is over. The time of the orc has come.
And by orc, I mean regulation. I mean the sad reality that you can build an audience painstakingly over years and it can be gone in an instant. You can lose your page in a second over a bot's determination that your church violated some arbitrary terms and conditions. Oh, you didn't actually violate those terms? No worries, let me just contact Facebook's handy support team to clear that up. They're famously attentive and responsive to the plight of their users. No? Must have confused them for someone else? Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's not that severe, right? You don't get banned. None of your accounts have been deleted, but they may as well have. Because sure, you have an account, it says you have followers. Look, they're right there, but they don't see your content. Not like they used to, anyway. Is it a shadow ban? Is it indicative of a changing platform that no longer favors content like yours, but instead is promoting a new flavor of the week? Maybe it's IGTV, notes, those are a thing, digital collectibles, shop, vertical video. But that's not the worst one of all, because for years, myself and other online voices have made the distinction between platforms you rent and platforms you own. And an example of a platform you rent is Facebook or Instagram. Did they change the rules on you? Well, that's to be expected, and why it's imperative to also have platforms that you control. And most of the time, when someone like me says that, we're referring to your email list and your website. Now, why is email different from social? Well, because you have control over the list. You can port your users from one email provider to another. You can't move your Facebook audience to TikTok, and that is a key distinction. And yet, how many subscribers on your email list are even guaranteed to see your emails today? They've opted in? Yes. Subscribed? Sure. Made known their intent and desire to see your emails? Correct. And yet, sadly, Google disagrees and said emails end up in the promotions folder. And if you think text is any better, please, just last month, I got an email from our texting platform that read, quote, "Hello, Brady. In a bold move to combat spam, the telecom industry has instituted a new campaign registry requirement for all toll-free numbers." So what does that mean for you? Well, moving forward, all numbers will go through a process of verification in order for carriers to allow SMS traffic. Okay, fine. So I submit my verification and get a response from the platform that we use saying, quote, "Sorry, the way that you're using text is not allowed by the carriers because you're not securing their express permission to text them." Now, wait a second. How do we use text messaging at my company? Every week, my co-host, Alex Mills, and myself do a question and answer podcast, the Pro Church Tools Show. On that podcast, we invite users to text us their questions. So people in our audience, people like you, of their own volition, text us questions and we text back. And I was told, yeah, well, that doesn't fall under one of the categories that the telecom industry has mapped out. You would need them to first accept terms and conditions. But they texted me. I can't text back? Technically, no. And this is perhaps the perfect example of the place that we're in right now. And look, it was predictable that this would happen. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long because usually there are 3 phases for something like this. And let's use drones as an example, all right? Phase 1 begins when new tech bursts onto the scene, and because the tech is new, there are no rules for it. So several years ago, suddenly the everyday consumer could fly cameras in the sky with drones. And what rules did they need to abide by? Well, none. We didn't have rules for this because up until just recently, it wasn't possible. So we didn't think to make rules for something that didn't exist. And in this phase 1 period, it is a free-for-all, which is fun, but not really safe. So then comes phase 2. And this is the overcorrection. Rules and regulations come in, and they're so strict because when there were no rules, chaos reigned. But in phase 2, even well-meaning, trained, responsible, rule-abiding citizens can't really fly drones without jumping through so much red tape that it's not even worth it. And the industry suffers as a result because the regulatory vice grip is too tight. And then comes phase 3, the healthy balance, where rules exist, yes, but if it's something you want to do, you can do it. Let's look at the auto industry. You want to drive a car? Cool. You'll need a license, some insurance, wear your seatbelt, drive this fast on these roads, follow those rules, and you're free to drive when and where you want. Of course, where we draw the lines and where we place the limits, that's the tricky part, right? We're not going to agree on every little detail. The intent of phase 3 is to find a healthy balance between freedoms and restrictions. Is that healthy balance universally agreed upon? Of course not. And you know what? For the scope of this video, I'm not especially interested in debating where those lines should be on the internet, simply because I'm not sure what there is to gain in discussing that. What I am interested in, though, is what the title of this video promotes, which is what you need to do to protect your church online. All right? And I've got 4 things for you. The first thing that your church will want to do is be proactive in combating the negatives of the new environment that we're in. So let's use email as an example for this. The reality is that you should expect fewer people to see your emails in clients like Gmail as they over-aggressively filter desired messages into places like the Promotions tab. Now, will your metrics reflect that? Maybe not. Because with Apple's new privacy measures, users can prevent senders from seeing if their emails were opened or not. And because according to Litmus, Apple Mail pulls in just about half of all the email client market share, these new privacy measures will likely have a pretty dramatic impact on email open rates for you and me, which is just another example of how things change. The metrics we once relied upon are no longer useful. So, what are you to do? Be proactive. Explicitly ask people to drag your church's email from the Promotions tab to their primary inbox. You can do this in a church-wide email in the PS section to catch yourself up, but if you're already in the Promotions tab, that might not help. So what you also want to do is in the introductory email, when new subscribers join your email list, make the same ask. If you're using Nucleus messages for your email campaigns, I'd use the welcome email feature to send an email to every new subscriber, and in that email, ask users to mark your email address as a safe sender. And the great thing about doing this with all new subscribers is that this is when their intent to be on your email list is at its highest. And so you can use that momentum to get them to take these few extra steps, which admittedly are a hassle to go through, but they're more likely to do it then than at any point in the future. Another aspect of being proactive is getting into the habit of cross-promotion. And this brings us to the second big idea that you'll want to embrace, which is to diversify. Because the fewer platforms your church is active on, the more vulnerable you become to one of those platforms restricting you. Also recognize that not all platforms are made equal. Yes, email has more restrictions on it now than it did just a few years ago, but it is still materially superior to a social platform like Facebook. Is your email deliverability suffering? Well, you can export your email list and try a different provider, but if your reach is suffering on Facebook, you can post and ask your users to follow you elsewhere. You could start a new account on another platform, but what you can't do is export your Facebook audience and then import it to YouTube, let's say. Bottom line, cross-promotion is a habit you want to get yourself into. Someone watches a sermon clip on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook Reels, put a call to action at the end to listen to the full sermon on your podcast or watch the full video on your YouTube channel. Now, you're inviting users to connect to you on multiple platforms. And the more platforms a person is connected to you on, the stronger the bond you have with them. To that end, I'll take this opportunity right now and ask you to join me on other platforms. If you haven't already, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter under my name, @BradyShearer. And if you're into podcasts, the aforementioned Pro Church Tools Show is for you. That's where folks say I'm most casual and personable. Just search my name in your podcast player of choice or search for the show name directly. Again, the Pro Church Tools Show. Another vein of diversifying is meaningfully investing in your church's website. And that means upgrading your site from a platform dedicated to presentation to one instead dedicated to invitation. There's a term that I use called slideshow syndrome that describes most church websites I see today. They're essentially extended presentations about the church. Here's who we are, here's what we do, here's more about us. But in this environment that we're in, your church's website should be the end point where all next steps eventually are taking place. And we already talked about maybe promoting your podcast or YouTube channel from a sermon clip posted on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. Well, then what gets promoted in the podcast itself or the YouTube video itself? Your website. The most important next steps, the ones that bond people to your church in the most substantive and meaningful ways, those should all be taking place on your website. Because then, when that happens, people get added to your people records online. They join the prayer hub and are participating in spiritual practice online. And now, not only do you have their contact information in a database that you own, but you're also having them take next steps on a platform that belongs to you. And that is, ultimately, the destination all of our churches should be aspiring to reach. That's the level of diversification that will give you the most protection. You can use the launcher by Nucleus for a lot of this. It's free. We built it with the express purpose of helping churches transition their websites from platforms dedicated to presentation to instead invitation, and we made it free forever for every church with no strings attached, because I really do care deeply in what we're talking about right now, that I didn't want anything to stand in your way of actually making these changes, because the stakes are just that high. And also because it's free forever, I can promote it freely to you without feeling like I'm selling you something, because again, there's nothing to sell. The product is free forever. Just go to nucleus.church/free, and that's where you can create your account and start using it. We also have a video dedicated to the launcher if it's newer to you and how to use it. It's linked on this video and in the description below. Let's move to the third step your church can take, and that is being mindful of the platforms that you partner with. Because here's the thing, many of the platforms that we partner with are so big that we don't get a say. Social networks, for example. But so much as you can, evaluate a company's beliefs on whom they choose to platform and how they choose to protect a user's right to exist online. And of course, this is a two-sided coin. In this video, we're talking a lot about your church's existence online, how to protect that. In past videos, I've talked at length about your responsibility as a church to protect your congregation's vulnerable information as its caretaker online. And to give you an example of how we talk about this in my company, we have a platform value for folks in your congregation that commits to mirror relational constructs and patterns of trust. And it goes on to describe how we intend to care for people's data as they take next steps online. We have another platform value for you, the church, that commits that will ensure privacy, security, and long-term reliability. And that value is all about protecting a place for your church to exist online. And if you care, you can read both of those in full at nucleus.church/about. And look, Nucleus is not going to be the right fit for every church, but these values should be illustrative of what I mean when I say that you want to be mindful of the platforms your church chooses to partner with. And this also leads into a larger discussion overall about Web3. Some see Web3 as a solution for the problems we're facing now, because one of the core concepts behind Web3 is decentralization, which is a way of saying that we want to give the power back to the people rather than the big corporations having all the control. That's far enough away, though, that really it's just speculation at this point. So let's talk now about our fourth and final step your church can take to respond to the changes we're seeing online, and that is to leverage what your church does in person. And this is the meaningful advantage your church has. And it's also unique to churches. Very few organizations have weekly gatherings where the people connected to the organization sit and listen to what the organization has to say. That is a structurally unique rhythm of church, and it's great news for our churches because we can use our in-person gatherings to be proactive with our congregations and talk about what's happening. We can use announcements to diversify and inspire people to connect with us on other platforms. We can use our in-person gatherings to get people taking next steps on our website and building that database in a space we control. And really, this is the perfect example of how online and offline are at their best when they're working together. Online cannot replace in-person. We know this. But in-person can also not replace online. They each do fundamentally different things. And so when they're working together in tandem, being supplementary, that's when things are at their best in our ministries. By the way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. So drop a comment below and share what you're thinking. Also, did you know that about 60% of the people that watch my YouTube videos are not subscribed to the channel? The thing is, the challenges that your church faces online are the same ones that we face. And subscribing to this channel helps me out a ton. If you're already subscribed, thank you. Make sure you hit the like button. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust. We'll talk soon.